How to overcome fear. Stoicism. Fear is a fascinating emotion with two sides to it. On one side, fear has been like a superpower for our ancestors, keeping them safe for thousands of years. It helps us react quickly when there's danger, making us either run away, flight response, or stand up to face it, fight response. This instinct also stops us from doing things that could hurt us, which is usually a good thing. But on the flip side, this same fear can hold us back from trying new things, taking chances, and stepping out of our comfort zone to become more well-rounded individuals. At its core, fear is our brain's way of reacting to something it thinks is a threat or danger. It's like an alarm bell in our minds, meant to protect us. However, in our modern lives, fear often doesn't come from immediate physical dangers, but from worries, uncertainties, and our thoughts about bad things that might happen. We'll focus on this kind of fear in our discussion. The Stoics had a unique perspective on fear. They didn't view fear as something external, like a powerful force imposing itself upon us. Instead, they saw fear as something that arises from our own thoughts, biases, perceptions, and life experiences. According to the Stoics, the true root of fear is not the world around us, but rather the beliefs and judgments we hold about that world. In contrast to being overwhelmed by fear, the Stoics actually embraced it as an inherent aspect of being human. They considered fear to be woven into the very fabric of our nature, an integral part of what defines us as individuals. To them, fear was not an unconquerable monster lurking in the shadows, ready to seize control of our thoughts and actions. Instead, they believed that fear is a psychological phenomenon that we can become aware of in the moment. With this awareness, we can examine it, understand it, and navigate it with wisdom. It's important to understand that fear isn't always a bad thing. Imagine this. You're walking near a busy road, and suddenly, a fear of getting hit by a car grips you. This fear is beneficial because it stops you from taking reckless actions like strolling onto the highway. The Stoics, an ancient philosophical group, had a wise perspective on fear. They didn't advise us to banish fear entirely from our lives. Instead, they'd valued what they called rational fear. This type of fear is like a built-in alarm system that recognizes genuine dangers and urges us to act cautiously. It's like having an inner voice saying, "Hey, watch out, that's risky." On the other side, the Stoics cautioned against irrational fear. This is fear that springs from false beliefs or misunderstandings. It's like worrying about monsters under your bed when you're an adult. Unnecessary and distressing. Certainly, the idea that fear comes from our thoughts means that fear isn't something that just happens to us. It's a reaction we experience when we think there's a danger of getting hurt, losing something valuable, or when things don't go as planned. This concept was expressed by Seneca, a wise Stoic philosopher, when he said, "We often suffer more in our minds than in reality." To make it simpler, imagine you're standing on the edge of a very tall cliff. The sight of the steep drop might naturally make you feel scared. However, according to the Stoics, it's not the cliff itself that makes you scared. It's your own thoughts about what might happen if you were to fall that create that fear. When you change your thoughts and realize that you're safe and secure at the edge, the fear starts to fade away. So it's not the situation itself, but how we perceive it that determines whether we feel fear or not. The ancient Stoics had a powerful idea for conquering fear. They thought we should take a good close look at our fears, like holding them up to the light, and decide if they make sense or if they're just based on a misunderstanding. This means asking ourselves whether our worries are reasonable and justified, or if they're actually irrational and rooted in a mistaken perception of the situation. This belief that we can actually deal with our fears is the very first step in changing how we deal with them. It helps us shift from feeling like fear controls us to taking charge and guiding ourselves through this complicated emotion. Rule 1. The practice of objective judgment. When it comes to our ability to make decisions about what we experience, it's something that sets us apart as humans from other animals. This ability to think and reason is incredibly powerful. It allows us to solve complex problems, plan for the future, weave together stories, and connect dots in the world around us, even when things seem unrelated. But this power comes with a catch. It can also lead us astray. Our judgments can be clouded by biases, causing us to see connections that don't exist and twist our understanding of reality. This misinterpretation can cause unnecessary suffering and distress. Now let's talk about fear. A big part of fear doesn't come from the world itself, but from how we perceive it. This is where false judgments come into play, giving rise to internal fears. So, how do we counter this? We use something called objective judgment. Objective judgment is our ability to see the world as it truly is, without the distortions caused by our own judgments and perceptions. By practicing objective judgment, we peel away the layers of distortion, fabrication, and exaggeration. We get to the core facts of a situation. Imagine you're about to give a public speech, and fear takes hold of you. This fear might stem from thoughts like, "I'll forget my lines," or "people will judge me." These thoughts are not based on facts, but on speculative judgments that blow the potential for harm or embarrassment out of proportion, fueling your fear. Now, apply objective judgment. The simple fact is that you're speaking to a group of people, nothing more. All those scary details are creations of your mind, not the reality of the situation. Rule 2. The power of negative visualization. Sometimes, thinking about bad things might actually help us. It's called negative visualization. This means picturing the worst stuff that could happen in the future, like losing your job or facing tough times. It might sound strange, but if we do it the right way, it can make us stronger. Here's why it works. When we imagine these bad situations, we get used to them. We realize they're not as scary as we thought. So when something similar really happens, it doesn't hit us as hard. We know we can handle it. For example, if you're worried about your job because the company is cutting down, you can imagine what it would be like to lose your job. Think about how you'd feel and what you'd do. After a while, you might realize that even though it's tough, you can get through it and maybe even find new opportunities. So negative visualization is like practicing for tough situations so they don't scare us as much when they happen. Rule 3. Practicing acceptance. The ancient Stoics had a profound insight into human well-being, and one of their key teachings was about the importance of acceptance. But what does acceptance truly mean in the Stoic philosophy? It's not about passive surrender or giving up. Instead, it's our ability to face and come to terms with the aspects of life that lie beyond our control. Imagine you're on your way to a friend's birthday party, and you find yourself stuck in frustrating traffic. In that moment, you have two choices. 1. Resisting reality. You might initially feel frustration, and then let it escalate into anger. You're upset at the world for causing this inconvenience, even though you can't control the traffic. 2. Embracing acceptance. Alternatively, you can recognize that traffic jams are a part of driving. You acknowledge that being late is undesirable, but beyond your control. What you can control is how you respond. So, you calmly inform your friend about the delay and make the best of the situation by listening to a podcast. This second scenario exemplifies the power of acceptance. It's not about liking or welcoming the situation. It's about acknowledging reality as it is. By doing so, you free yourself from the grip of frustration and anger, focusing on the aspects you can influence. This practice of acceptance extends beyond traffic scenarios. Consider the fear of rejection when applying for a job or expressing romantic interest in someone. The outcome, whether acceptance or rejection, is beyond your control. Acceptance here means recognizing that rejection is a possibility, but it doesn't define your worth or abilities. It's about reducing the fear associated with events beyond your influence. Rule 4. Cultivate mindfulness and presence. In our hectic and distracting world, practicing mindfulness is like giving our minds a helpful guide. It's not just about meditation. It's about being fully in the present moment. Instead of dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, we're encouraged to soak up the here and now. The ancient Stoics believed that many of our fears come from thinking too much about the past or the future. As Seneca put it, we often scare ourselves more than we actually get hurt, and our imagination is a bigger problem than reality. Our minds love to wander into what-ifs and if-onless, but these thoughts tend to bring fear, anxiety, and regret. Mindfulness is the solution to our wandering minds. It keeps us grounded in the present, so we're not lost in future worries or past regrets. This doesn't mean we ignore the past or future. We approach them with a clear and deliberate mindset, not fear or regret. Imagine you're afraid of public speaking. Before a presentation, your mind might conjure up scenarios of forgetting your lines or making mistakes, or it might dwell on past failures. These thoughts make your fear worse. But if you focus on the present, your breath, the words you're saying, and the audience's reaction, you can reduce that fear. Mindfulness also helps us observe our emotions, including fear, without getting overwhelmed by them. This Stoic practice, called prosok, involves attentive mindfulness, where we pay attention to our feelings, thoughts, and sensations in the present moment. It allows us to respond with clarity and calmness instead of being swept away by our emotions. That's it for today. We hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for more updates.